Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Nate. I also go by Hockey Boy Nate. In this video, we're going to be talking about all sorts of different things with the weather and how this could potentially be impacting the United States. So if you guys are new to my channel, please be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to stay up to date with all the latest information. Leave a like on the video as well. That would be greatly appreciated. I appreciate all the support that you guys bring to my videos and my live streams, and I will continue to do so as long as I can. Of course, for the best information, please go to your national hurricane centers, your storm prediction centers, or your local weather forecasting offices for the best information possible. We have a lot of things that we can see here in satellite imagery. We have Hurricane Grace that's currently going over the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. We also have Tropical Storm Henri, which is about to become a hurricane pending it fighting off with some northerly shear that's going to be impacting it over the next couple of days. We have the remnants of Fred, which has been creating this little interesting tornado risk for the most part of the eastern seaboard, or the eastern portions of the United States, I should say. So whether or not that could potentially pose a tornado risk for New England, we'll have to see. And then the one thing you can't see is the developing severe weather risk that's going to be ongoing here in the northern plains. And we're actually going to shift over to that topic by looking at the Storm Prediction Center's convective outlook. This giant light green is just a general thunderstorm risk, so don't exactly pay too much attention to that. What you should be paying attention to is these dark greens and these yellows, and you can see that we have that here across much of the United States, or at least portions of the United States, including New England, as well as areas in the northern plains into the Rockies. So what that basically means is the dark green is a 1 out of 5 on the severe weather scale, and the yellow is a 2 out of 5 on the severe weather scale. So if you live in these areas, you definitely should take your proper precautions and monitor the potential development of some severe weather. There is a decent chance for hail and wind. There's a 15% chance that you will see those severe characteristics within a 25-mile radius. So I would highly advise watching out for that and stay in a sturdy structure. And then there is a 5% chance for tornadoes within a 25-mile radius planted right in the western panhandle of Nebraska, as well as northeastern portions of Colorado and extreme southwestern portions of South Dakota. There even is an expansive 2% chance for tornadoes surrounding that 5%, and a 2% chance for tornadoes there in New England as well. So I would watch out for that as that continues to move on through today. And then tomorrow, which would be August 20th, 2021, there's a very expansive severe weather day that's going to be ongoing. As I said, the dark green is a 1 out of 5 on the severe weather scale, and the yellow is a 2 out of 5 on the severe weather scale, which would be extending all the way through the upper Midwest into the northern plains, specifically in southeastern portions of North Dakota, eastern portions of South Dakota, eastern portions of Nebraska, as well as much of Minnesota and Iowa and western portions of Wisconsin. You can see that there also is the same risks here for hail and wind, 15% chance for those characteristics within a 25-mile radius, but then you also have a very expansive 5% chance for tornadoes within a 25-mile radius. And because this is one day out, I can actually expect all the conditions to potentially increase to a higher probability. So we're definitely going to want to watch out for that. If you guys were to ask me as to whether or not I would live stream this event, I probably would. So stay tuned for more information on that tomorrow, as this will most likely be a lot clearer as we get a lot closer to the event. But let's take a look at the satellite, or not the satellite imagery. Let's take a look at the simulated reflectivity for this event. If you guys want the timing for this event, it'd be on the left-hand side. However, it is in Eastern Daylight Time. So depending upon whether or not you're in Central or Mountain Daylight Time, you might have to subtract 1 hour, or you might have to subtract 2 hours. So just keep in mind as you watch through this image. But by looking through, this is the morning hours of Thursday heading into Thursday afternoon and evening, and you can see some showers and thunderstorms that really become widespread here by 6 o'clock Mountain, 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time. And just by seeing as to how they started to form, it would be right around 2 p.m. Mountain, 3 p.m. Central Daylight Time, where it really starts to get sporadic in the exact warning area that the Storm Prediction Center labeled. So definitely something that they're going to want to watch out for. And this will continue to be an overnight threat into central portions of the Dakotas and Nebraska. You even get some leftover snow here that is ongoing here in the Rockies. Some potential cold air that could be seeping in behind all of this. And that's kind of crazy for this time of year because we are in August and we don't particularly see snow here in the middle of summer. So definitely something that I found interesting as this continued to propagate further. And you can see these areas of snow here in portions of Montana all the way down into Wyoming and Colorado, basically places in the higher elevations. So I would really want to watch out for that, as that has definitely piqued my interest moving on forward. And then we're going to move to a bigger image here, a zoomed out image more or less with all this event. And you can see how as this progresses from Friday morning into Friday afternoon, you do have some scattered showers and thunderstorms that try to develop, but then there's this massive line that starts to form here in along the border of south central South Dakota and northern Nebraska, and that will eventually propagate further eastward and create more of a widespread severe risk, especially since more showers and thunderstorms are expected to form north and south of that line to form one giant congealed line. And by 3 mountain, by 4 central, look at this expansive line that starts to form here that goes all the way down from Nebraska into the western panhandle of Oklahoma, even some residual showers near Amarillo, Texas, and the northern panhandle over there. And this is what's going to create your widespread severe weather event, potentially a severe weather outbreak could be ongoing here, maybe even a tornado outbreak if things go the right way for this system. But very expansive storm that is expected to move on through into places of Omaha, Kansas City, even into Grand Forks and central portions of the Midwest and the Northern Plains. So I would really want to watch out for this. I will give you guys more information as to what's going to happen tomorrow, especially as this continues to get into a clearer view. We are still a day away from it, so models can still change slightly, but for the most part, it's pretty set in stone as to whether or not you're going to get a severe weather risk or not. The good news is that the residual showers and thunderstorms are expected to sort of die out once it starts to head towards the Great Lakes vicinity on Saturday morning. So for the people who may ask as to whether or not they could get the residual effects of these storms, they could potentially, but it may not be to the full capabilities of what it was the day prior. All right, let's go back to the visible satellite here. We're going to take the wide view and show you, as I said, here is Henri and here is Grace. And the first things first that I think we should talk about here is the ongoing hurricane. So let's go to Grace. I showed you temporarily a view of Grace, and then I decided to go back to the widespread visual imagery. But here is Grace on satellite, and you can see it definitely has a decently defined center of circulation with a perfectly, well, not exactly a perfectly aligned, but a decently aligned mid-level and lower-level vortex. And so this thing does seem to be continuing to show all signs of it being a tropical system and for it to potentially intensify. But the only thing that's really hampering this, or at least two things, is number one, it's over land at the moment. So it's not exactly getting a lot of its energy typically from the waters, and so this is going to continue to weaken it gradually as it continues to move over. A lot of friction that's preventing a lot of these showers and thunderstorms to gain a lot of traction compared to the warm, moist air of the ocean. And there's a lot of warm waters here from the Gulf of Mexico into the Caribbean. And so this thing, if it potentially gets back over water, which it's forecasted to do so, then you can expect it to potentially intensify further. Whether or not this will weaken into a tropical storm over land, it's very possible. It's actually more than likely at this instance, but it is expected to intensify back into a hurricane if that is the case once it gets back over the Bay of Campeche. Zooming out here on the water vapor imagery, half of the slide, or half of the image, you can't actually see what's happening down in Central America, but north of that is actually what we're going to want to look for. And you can see all of this black mass that's towards the north of Grace. And what that is that's some residual dry air that's going to be trying to really hamper the storm. And the reason why Grace hasn't really rapidly intensified is because of that dry air and how that's been surrounding the actual storm of Grace. And you can actually see these clear bands that's right next to Grace here on the eastern side. and that is some dry air that's starting to try and envelop the storm. Last night we actually saw it relatively well, to where it basically shut off most of its thunderstorms due to that while it was over water. But the thing of it is that once it continues to propagate further westward, it is expected to gather more and more thunderstorm activity and potentially even intensify and ditch that dry air that's going to try and impact the storm. But dry air will continue to be the major factor here, and whether or not this will continue to stay as a tropical storm once it gets over the Bay of Campeche, it's a lot more it's a lot more of a pondered question than it was before, due to the fact of what we've seen over the past 24 hours. So here's the forecast cone for Hurricane Grace, and you can see it is expected to weaken back into a tropical storm once it continues to move over the Yucatan Peninsula, but then it is expected to intensify into a hurricane and then potentially make impacts further south, much south of the United States here, towards the southern area of the Bay of Campeche, along the border, along the coastline here of Mexico. So if you live in these areas of Mexico, highly advise that you guys definitely watch out for the pending tropical system that will most likely make landfall in your area. It's not expected to be a super strong hurricane if it does intensify, due to the fact that it is moving relatively quickly off towards the west. If I actually pull up the current data of Hurricane Grace, it is a maximum sustained storm of 75 miles per hour, moving west at 17 miles per hour. That's pretty quick for a tropical system. Just for reference, Tropical Storm Henri is actually moving west at 9 miles per hour. So you can see the big difference here of the speeds for the tropical systems. But it is expected to make landfall sometime on Friday evening into Saturday morning, and so I would really want to watch out for that if you live over there. Hurricane watches have been issued in the areas that is most likely going to make landfall. You do have tropical storm watches still, tropical storm warnings in effect around the Yucatan Peninsula. Still have hurricane warnings in effect for areas near Cancun and south into Cozumel. And then you also have some tropical storm watches that will most likely expire here near the northern portions of Cuba along the coastline. And you also have some tropical storm watches north of the hurricane watch along the mainland parts of Mexico. So if we take a look at the GFS model here, the big thing that we're going to want to look out for is these big shaded areas. Then that indicates high cyclonic vorticity, which basically is tropical systems in this instance. And so here is Henri and here is Grace. And we're going to pay attention to Grace here for the most part. And so what's going to happen here is there's this huge ridge that's currently centered in place right over Georgia and Florida, and it's creating a lot of this clockwise spin and this steering flow. And so that steering flow is basically preventing this tropical system from moving off towards the north. And that's a good sign for the United States. Of course, a bad sign for areas in Mexico who are going to be impacted, but it's pretty much set in stone for the most part as to the track of Grace. It's not expected to go further north, and so that is the good news with that. But just for reference as to the track with this system, as we play the image along, the model run along, you can see that the GFS actually does continue to move on through with this tropical system, and it does end up making a landfall there in Mexico. So now let's shift gears over towards Tropical Storm Henri. And as of the latest advisory, it was a 70 mile per hour tropical storm with a minimum pressure of 995 millibars. It was, as I said, moving west at 9 miles per hour, so it's not exactly the quickest thing in the world. By looking at the satellite imagery, you can definitely see that the mid-level circulation and the lower-level circulation is a bit displaced. You can see here is the lower-level circulation, and here is the mid-level circulation right about there. And the reason why this is because there's a lot of northerly shear at the moment, and you can tell because a lot of these showers and thunderstorms that actually form around the system actually start to disintegrate a little bit and move off a little bit towards the south and west. So maybe a bit more of a northeasterly shear component, but then you also can see a little bit of these feathers from these storms to where they blow up and then they start to move further down south. So really interesting to see from this as this continues to move on through. And then the big thing here as well is that if we if we go and zoom out here, you can actually see the big reason why. So we still have our ridge in place, which is over here near Georgia and Florida, creating this clockwise flow for the most part, and that's creating most of this shear that's going right into Grace. But then what's basically going to happen is as this thing continues to propagate further westward, this is actually going to take some of its shear with it. But the big thing for the most part here within the next 1 to even 2 days is that whether or not Grace can actually maintain that this actual form from the northerly shear, because some of this shear is now going to start getting stronger, and you can see the clear difference between the northerly shear down here and the northerly shear further up towards the north, further north of Bermuda. And so what that means is that that shear is most likely going to continue to head a bit further south, and it could be imposing some very interesting characteristics with Tropical Storm Henri. So whether or not these showers and thunderstorms continue to stay around the mid-level and lower-level circulation and not become displaced will determine as to the track of Tropical Storm Henri. If that does not if this does not end up being the case to where the thunderstorms do not get displaced from those circulations, this will end up having a further westerly track for the system, but it will most likely not impact the Carolinas due to the fact that they will have a low pressure system, a weak low pressure system that'll be moving on through there, and I'll show you guys in the next model run. But if these thunderstorms do become displaced from the lower level and mid-level circulations, you can expect Henri to move off towards the north a lot quicker and potentially be a lot weaker as well. So it's just a matter of whether or not Henri can continue to maintain its current strength or potentially even strengthen as it continues to move off further and further to the west. And if it can continue to hold on to that strength, then we could be potentially talking about this thing to intensify further into a hurricane and impact areas along the eastern seaboard. Taking a look at the cone of uncertainty here from the National Hurricane Center, you can see that this is expected to become a tropical storm until Friday evening, or Friday afternoon into Friday evening, according to the National Hurricane Center. As I said, this could potentially be a hurricane a little bit earlier than that, and it could even intensify into a stronger hurricane within the time frame of Friday into Sunday. And so we really need to watch out for that. And even a little bit further on, 4 to 5 days here, you can see that inside the cone of uncertainty, there is New England and portions of the Northeast here. So by Monday into Tuesday, you guys really need to watch out for the potential impact of this tropical system. I'm more or less expecting that some of the tropical storm force winds could be getting into your area earlier than that. So most likely Sunday evening when you guys could potentially start to get hints of this system. But really something that we got to continue to monitor as this continues to propagate towards the north and east. All right, let's take a look at the models here from the GFS. We're going to be taking a look at the relative humidity for the most part. And what this is basically going to show us is all these circles here, all these little contours indicate the lower level circulation. And then right in the middle of all this dark green blobbiness is actually the mid-level circulation. You can see on the models, it's already a bit displaced here, similar to what we saw on satellite imagery. And as this continues to propel further and further west, you can see that it becomes more and more apparent that this system does become a little bit displaced. You can see all the blobbiness, all of the green blobbiness continue to be further south of the center area of low pressure. But then what's going to happen here is there's actually going to be this low pressure system that's most likely going to move on through here and basically channel it into all sorts of different areas. And the way that we can actually see that here is if we take a look at the 250 millibar wind, we can see that there is this low pressure system here that is moving in this counterclockwise fashion. and this will create a lot of steering for Henri as this continues to move on through, as well as a ridge that is basically in place right about here, and it's going to create this clockwise flow right similar to this. And so what's going to basically happen is this low pressure system is going to basically stall out a little bit and force Henri to move in between that ridge and that low pressure system. And that's the reason why this track is taking it so close to New England, because it just so happens that these two instances are ongoing at the moment, and they are forcing this tropical system to move off further and further towards the north and closer to land. Now, it all depends upon what happens with those ridges and those troughs as to whether or not the timing can be right for the system to move closer to the US or further and further away from it into portions of Canada. So it all really depends upon the timing, and we'll have our answer more or less as to not only the intensity but the track of the system within the next 1 to 2 days as this continues to move on through. So you guys, I highly recommend staying with the channel. You guys will be getting the latest information that I can provide for you. I will also be giving out a tropical update on this system later on tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, so please do not miss that on my YouTube channel. And then, of course, as we start to get into more of the uncertain parts of the models, we'll be able to see how this continues to propagate further and further towards the north. I'll move back to the relative humidity at this point, and you can see that according to the GFS, this thing does intensify quite rapidly over these areas, and as this heads off further and further towards the north, the GFS actually projects a potential landfall here somewhere around Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, and the Cape Cod general vicinity. And so the big thing here is that areas here in the Northeast really need to watch out for this tropical system and how it continues to unfold. If it does become a strong storm to even a hurricane, even by landfall, this could create some major impacts across much of this area, especially since they are not exactly fine-tuned to all of this tropical weather, especially with what happened with Sandy. And so one major question that some people might be asking is, well, aren't the waters going to be a lot cooler once you head further north? And you are correct, but the actual anomalies of these sea surface temperatures over there are well above average. And I actually was recent over at Cape Cod for a vacation, and I'm not sure if any others who may be watching from Cape Cod or this general area may know, but if you actually go on the southern coast, the waters over there are relatively warm. There aren't exactly the best of waves unless if you have a storm system that moves on through, but there is some relatively warm waters out there, and upwards of 70 to maybe even the mid 70s in degrees in Fahrenheit. So really something that we got to watch out for as this continues to move on through. So that's going to be it from me, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy the video, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you are new, turn on notifications, share this with friends and family and on social media. Also follow me on social media. Link will be in the description down below. I will catch you guys later on tonight. So peace out, everyone.